Hello, everyone, and welcome to Catholic Truth. Have you ever wondered why many people complain that they are not being fed in the Catholic Church? Have you ever wondered why they complain about their parish? They complain about homilies, they complain about choirs, they complain about a whole lot of things. Even priests can be running around like chickens with their heads cut off, and they wonder if there's a way to get better finances, if there's a way to rejuvenate their parish, if there's a way to fire up their parishioners. Like from the top down, people have questions. How can we do better in building up our parishes and building up our churches around the country? And we're going to be talking about just that today. In fact, there's a fantastic book, in fact, a series of books. The one I was working on today is Tools for Rebuilding by Father Michael White and Tom Cochran. And he is going to be joining us today to talk about how to rebuild the church, because it's such an important topic. The church was kind of, destroyed in many ways in the 1960s and 70s. And there was kind of a perfect storm. And I've done other videos on it, but, there's a fantastic book called The Decline and Fall of the Catholic Church in America. And it talks about all of the different reasons and difficulties that the church faced at once. And we find ourselves in a rebuilding phase. And so I'm thankful to Tom for writing books like this that give 75 really, really practical ways to make a better parish. So, Tom, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brian. Great to be with you.
Yeah, it's good to have you here as well. And if anyone, for the record, doesn't know Tom, he's actually a graduate of Loyola University and a master's degree at Franciscan University. He's had extensive, experience working in parish life. He's done it all. He was small group leader. He was kids ministry coordinator, youth minister. Now he's a pastoral assistant. He's authored 3 books. He's kind of done it all. And, kind of like myself, I've done it all in parish life too. I've seen things from top to bottom. I think Tom has a lot of good advice on how parishes can build themselves. Tom, when I was, starting out as, intermediate before I started Catholic Truth here, I got a youth ministry job in a town called Darien, Connecticut. They had just seen a scandal, a huge scandal, and everyone left the church. I mean, when I arrived, it looked like Sister Act. Like there were like 12 people in the pews. Nobody went there. And it was one of the most wealthy churches in America. And the thing is that they brought in this fantastic, God-centered, spirit-filled priest who brought that church from like 12 people to over 80 active ministries. It was one of the most successful parishes I've ever seen. And I said, you know what? Why can't everybody just build a church, a parish from the ground up? And then I realized that most people just don't know how. They're not taught that in seminary. Do you want to maybe briefly comment on that?
Sure. Yeah, I think, obviously it's hard work. We need to start with that. But, I think, grace and effort go together. So grace builds on nature. But I think, I think when it comes to most of our priests, they are not really prepared for what it takes to run a parish in the sense of really well grounded in theology and philosophy, and certainly need to know the rubrics of the sacraments and saying mass. But when you kind of come into a parish, it's a very different experience. In some ways, you can use the analogy of running a small business. You have all the administrative things from finances, and you have to try to build a team and a staff. And then I think there's a lot of just then communication and learning how to communicate with the people in our community and build those relationships. So I think there's a lot of things that are just not taught in seminary. I guess that's a whole other issue about how to address that, but it's just the reality of where we are right now. A lot of work to be done to help equip both priests and lay parish staff to know how to run a parish well and be successful.
And I don't know if we always think about that, like you have a chapter in your book called The Need for Excellence in our parish. And I don't think across the board people think about that. Like I have a book on my shelf on the other side of my library here. It's called For Better Forever. And it's about how to have an excellent marriage. It's what the top 7% of people in the country know, and the top 7% of marriages, and how to get there. how to have that. I feel like most people just go through marriage. They just go through day to day. And you know, analogously, I think it's the same way in parish life. I think we just go through the motions. We do what we're supposed to do. We say mass. You know, we maybe have a program here or there, but we don't think about the need for excellence. Can you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, we like to say that excellence honors God and inspires people. And I do think often the reason excellence suffers is because of a lack of focus. To be excellent, something does take hard work, but it also takes focus. I mean, you can't be excellent at everything, right? You just can't. Um, you know, so it's also helping to focus our energy and attention on the things that can make the greatest impact. But yes, I also think too what you're saying, it can sound like an extra burden to parish leaders or parish staff or pastors if we put excellence on top of them, on top of everything else they're doing. So I think in order to kind of achieve excellence, to have excellence in what we're doing, we have to actually be doing a lot less and helping again parish staff and pastors and priests understand what can they let go of and don't feel like they have to do everything.
And I like the story you tell in your book about, you know, or I think Father Michael talks about it, about, you know, if you go to see a movie or if you read a good book or if you go to just the best restaurant you've ever had, you literally go tell everybody about it. And you try to convince people to go to that restaurant or go see that movie. We all do it because it was the best movie you've ever seen or it just inspired you. It changed you in some way. And so in parish life, if we're shooting for excellence, then we will be inspiring our parishioners. They're going to be happier. They're going to be holier. They're going to give back more with time, treasure, and talents. And, you know, our parishioners are going to flourish, but I don't think we think with that, you know, world view. And that's kind of the point of your book. And I want to recommend the book to people, anybody who's in the parish life here. You know, that he has a book on rebuilding and then tools for rebuilding. And it gives you the actual practical ways to be able to do that. And you can take these and kind of implement them. You know, you don't have to just take all 75 and just slam them all at once, but it's kind of like a little encyclopedia of knowledge, you know, like what can we do to make the mass better? What can we do to build up, you know, morale among our staff? How can we raise a youth ministry program? How can we get funding better? Like these are all practical questions that parishes want to know, that they struggle with. And now there's resources for them. There should be no reason why we don't check out this book. Um, and I think I like your chapter on church. You know, I think a lot of this stems from a misunderstanding of what church is. You know, many people, you know, say it's a building, or you know, we don't understand what the mission of the church is. We just kind of think we go there, we meet, we leave. You know, priest and congregational life. But maybe you can explain what is church? What is our mission? You know, where does it come from?
Yeah, so the chapter you're talking about, and these are brief chapters, but it talks about when Jesus first used that word church in all the gospels, right? And that is in Matthew 16, where first of all Peter confesses that Jesus is the Messiah, he is the Son of God, and then Jesus turns to Peter and says, "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to my Father in heaven, and I tell you, you are a rock, and upon my rock I will build my church." And the word he uses in the Greek is that word ecclesia. And if he meant simply a building, he might have said, upon you I'll build my temple, or I'll build my synagogue. But that word ecclesia was a Greek word that meant the gathering of people together for the benefit of the larger community. And that is what the church is. It is a gathering. It is us bringing together, but ultimately, and we need that. We need to connect, but ultimately it's not just for our benefit, but for the benefit of our larger community. And, you know, you go to Matthew 28, the whole nations and the whole world. That Jesus has sent us to make disciples so we can impact the whole world.
Amen. And do we do that? I mean, is evangelization even happening in most parishes? I mean, this is kind of a redundant, you know, self-rhetorical question, but like, no. I mean, the bishops of the Catholic Church, their documents, they're constantly talking about evangelization, but I don't know if a lot of parishes know exactly or practically how to do that. Or, you know, back in the day, we had like 6 priests for one parish. Now we have one parish for like 3 priests, 1 priest for 3 parishes. It's like, you know, back in the day, they had more resources to do these things. And now I feel like priests are overwhelmed. I think I think they're just trying to survive many times. You know, I think there's a lot of issues. But the people on our side can feel frustrated. We can feel underfed. We can feel like I know I'm just sharing my experience, but from here, I have many churches in my town, and I am just frustrated with all the churches in all the area that I have because they're all just doing the minimum amount. I feel like they're all just getting by. They're all just doing what they're supposed to and nothing extra. There's nothing excellent about it. It's just I did the minimum amount in high school. I passed, but barely. Like I want something beautiful. I want something life changing. And I don't think we think in those terms as we were saying. I know one priest who used to give a homily like this, like he practically was asleep in his own hand. It's like, it's not going to change lives. So I don't know. Maybe we could, what do you see, from your end as some of the issues that need to be dealt with in the church today? Maybe, I mean, there's tons of them here, but what are some more of the bigger issues that may need to be started to be dealt with?
Yeah, well, I think the first and the biggest mindset again is that um, I think pastors need to change, parish staff need to change, and people need to change. But it does start with leadership of the church again, of saying their role is not to feed us. Their role is not to make us, become religious consumers, as we like to say. We don't go there to consume religion, but to help us become, contributors and ultimately, be committed to the faith and but to take ownership of our own spiritual growth and development. And again, the work of the church to be a missionary work in the sense to, again, we gather together. We absolutely need that. We need to be nourished on the Eucharist, nourished on God's word, but we're nourished there not just to keep feed me, feed me, feed me. We're nourished to go out and do something, right? They're saying my body takes in food so that I will go and do work and I will be able to meet the demands of my life and to serve others, right? We receive the Eucharist, we receive nourishment on God's word so that we might go out and serve others. And so I think that's the biggest mentality. Again, if we say do things excellently, if priests and parish leaders are already doing a lot of things, then I think that's what leads to the kind of what you're just saying, the kind of mailing it in at times or not giving the greatest effort because they're trying to do too much. If they understand that they're not to do all the work of ministry, like Ephesians 4:11-12, God has gave us pastors and teachers not to do all the work of ministry, to prepare the saints. That's us for the work of ministry. And I think that's the big mindset that needs to change. We like to talk about at Rebuilt, which is our helping other parishes, of building a vast army of Christ followers. We're bringing God's love. That's what the parishes be doing, building a vast army of God.
And that's such an important point because we all need to do it. We are the church. Like when people say, "Oh, there's no Bible study in my parish." Well, go start one. You're the church. Like we have to do it. We're called to do it. We all have a hand in it. In fact, I know one priest who just got so sick and tired down in Florida of people saying the church is dead. The church is dead. It's not feeding me. And they were going to these Protestant churches. And so he actually held a funeral. I don't know if you heard the story. He held a funeral for his own church. He said, "The church is dead. We're getting rid of it. Come to the funeral for this church. It's going to be no more." And just out of curiosity, everybody came. The church was full because he announced it in all the radio ads, newspaper ads, and people came. And he had this eulogy for his church. And during the coffin section, he opened the coffin for people to pay their last respects for the church. And people all got up one at a time, just thought, "But this guy's crazy," but they wanted to see. And they all went up and they looked in the coffin to see what was actually in there. And he had a full length mirror in the coffin. And then after everyone sat down, he gave this brilliant homily about how everybody is the church. You are the church. If the church is dead, it's because of you. You need to step up. We need help here. We need ministries. And now it's one of the most vibrant churches in Florida. But I think that changed when you go to a church that is excellent and then one that's not. I feel the difference, and I think what you said is true, that those priests, they know what they're doing. They have focus, and they've put these principles into effect.
Yeah, and again, that's the role of myself and other people who work in the parish. We need to lead people and help them to see, what they're capable of, and kind of call it out of people for sure, and give a vision of what could be and should be. It's been said when a leader starts blaming people, they've abdicated leadership, and so it's definitely very easy to get frustrated in leadership. People never move as fast as you want them to move. But I think it's again a belief in people that and belief who God has called them to be, created them to be, as Ephesians 2:10. You're God's workmanship, and helping people to see that see themselves as ministers, see themselves as the church that's on the move and to help serve other people and build his kingdom. Uh, that's what we can be challenging people to do.
Yeah, and I don't think I put this on your list of questions that I wanted to ask you, but I'm just thinking about it off the top of my head. Like some of the most toxic and horrible people that I've ever worked with have been in the Catholic Church in many of the parishes that I've worked with. And it's frustrating because it's like you have this mindset like, oh, we're Christian, like we should act Christian. And yet we're all destroying each other within the church many times. We're cutting each other down. We think, there's these egos, there's these issues going on. I feel like many times priests are the problem standing in the way, and I like that a short chapter that you had, that it's not all about you. Like we have to get out of the way because it's about Christ and his church. And I feel like many of the obstacles to success are people who work in the church. And I don't know if there's a solution to that or what your thoughts might be on that.
Well, yeah, I think that's one of the things I used to try to tell people when they come to work at the parish and here at Nativity in outside Baltimore. I'm like, prepare to be scandalized. And I stopped saying because it led people to think all kinds of not good, really bad things. But all I meant by that is, look, if you come work at a church, you're going to meet people, and people are fallen, and people are broken, and people, even in the church, right? We're being redeemed, but we are in the process of being redeemed and made into Christ's image. So, and Christ's character. So I think there is some part of that there has to be just the kind of, and Jesus didn't said not to be surprised by that. The kingdom of heaven is like a dragnet that brought in all kinds of people. So some part not to be frustrated by that. And then again, people were all broken. We're broken, and at times we need to be challenged. And so it's, I think, a humility to say, to challenge people at times appropriately, or, to understand people. And I think you kind of did have that in the question. And our priests are people too, right? I was kind of more reminded about someone just giving advice when you're trying to approach your boss or somebody over above them. The first thing to remember is they're a person too. They have good days and bad days. You want to approach them humbly. You want to approach them with a servant attitude, and that often goes a long way. So, but yeah, it's again, it's been said about ministry, it'd be easy if it wasn't for the people.
And like you said, it's hard because we don't simplify. We're trying to do too much rather than doing what we do really well. And, there was this show back in the day on MTV, and I think it was MTV Real World. And one of the people became Catholic, and they exposed kind of the whole thing about how they only put alcohol on the set. There was no money. They hardly gave them, they gave enough money for one meal a day. And they didn't give them any food on set. So these people became the worst versions of themselves, and they fought. And it's all the drama that the TV ratings wanted. And, analogously, I feel like it's in the church sometimes too. I think that priests take on too much, that I don't have time to pray. Like I have to do this, I have to do that. And they almost lose themselves in it. And it's like they can't become the full people that God made them to be because they have too much put on them. They have too many burdens. They have too many expectations, and they don't know how to deal with it all. I've had religious education leaders, because I deal with a lot of them. I teach a lot of them. Youth ministers tell me, I don't have time to pray. I have so much work that I don't have time to pray. And once you lose that prayer life, you lose that ministry because you can't give what you don't have. And I think that's a huge issue.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the first person you have, talk about church leadership, the first person you have to lead is yourself. And part of leading yourself is, yeah, creating that time for the Lord and uh, keeping that quiet time, that time for devotion, whatever fuels you personally and helps you connect to God, right? You can't give what you don't have. And um, so there's always more to do. There's always lots to do, but nothing is more important as connecting to God. I totally agree with you on that. And yeah, I think if you want to survive long term in ministry, kind of have talk about different tips for surviving in ministry, but one of them has to be carving out that time for your own personal prayer life and time with God, and knowing what fuels you and staying committed to it.
Literally. And for the record, I just want to point out that we have a video called How to Forgive the Church. Anyone out there, if you're struggling with, toxicity, or you've been hurt by the church, just look up Catholic Truth, How to Forgive the Church. And it's from personal experience. I remember teaching the kids these in seventh grade because I was a religious education director, and I made them all memorize the creed, and they were all so proud of themselves. And they all came in and they recited it, and then the priest heard about it. One of the priests, and he came in. He's like, "Hey, they don't need to know the creed. I don't even have it memorized. Effective immediately. It's no longer needed here." And
Mm.
he's such an angry, horrible priest. I can understand why people leave the church with people like that. And if I didn't have a deep prayer life, and I didn't invest in myself first and have that deep relationship, I just would get angry. And I was always tempted to get angry and, frustrated with his constant, bickering and cutting down of the program. And I think if we don't invest in ourselves first, that Darien parish I told you about, that priest always prayed. He kept his prayer life. And after a certain amount of time, like 6 o'clock, if it wasn't an emergency, he didn't see people because he needed that time for himself to recoup and recover. And we all need to do that. So you talk about investing a lot in the book, and you talk about investing in music. Just as one example, can you tell us why music is so important toward, say, mission or excellence in the church?
Yeah, I mean, go back to what you said when we talked about excellence and focusing, and really what we talk about is the importance of focusing on what we call the weekend experience, which is the weekend mass and any things we put around that. And one of the key ones is music. And so music has an ability to move the soul, right? It has an ability to move the soul like nothing else, and it's almost mysterious how much music can move the soul to worship God. So Plato in the book about the Republic talks about 40 pages about the music in the perfect republic. So uh, again, even people who are not Christian understand that. So music's just so powerful. In my own personal life, I talk about growing up Philly Catholic, and I also like rock and roll and like classic rock growing up, and the music I heard in church wasn't really well done, and it didn't really match the music I liked and listened to kind of in leisure time. And for me, it was a great thing to be exposed to more contemporary worship music where it lifted my soul to God. It was music that moved me. And so I think for many people, even if they come to church and they don't have a faith or strong relationship with God, music can move their soul in a way nothing else can. And yet it is so often poorly played in church and not well done and not invested in. So we try to hold that up as encouraging pastors, parish staff to make that investment because it can move the soul like nothing else.
Yeah, and it can have the opposite effect as well. I was running Bible study the other night, and some guy came over and he went to a new parish, and he said the music was just awful. He said not only did it not bring his soul up to God and, help him, aid him to pray, it actually brought it, like, kind of just brought it downward. It just kind of, just, he was so frustrated. He's like, this doesn't help me at all.
Yeah, we
Um,
talked about that music in our same thing. People would leave our church before we addressed it. They would leave mad, right? They would be upset. That's not the impact we want to have. I think whatever music and whatever forms it takes, and there's obviously lots of different forms, it can inspire and it should inspire that when we leave the mass, we're inspired to follow Christ, and the music has helped us do that.
Yeah, and Thomas Aquinas talks about the ways that we experience and encounter God, and one of those ways is through beauty. And, beautiful music lifts and raises our soul up to God and helps us to contemplate heavenly mysteries so well. I remember asking a choir director at the Darien Parish. There were three different masses. One had beautiful music. One had a guy who used to be on Broadway, and he played every song like it was on Broadway, and his songs were just atrocious. And so one day I asked him, I was like, "Why do you choose the songs you do? And why do you choose to play them the way you do?" Just out of curiosity. And he said, "Well, quite frankly, it doesn't even matter. The people in the pews, they don't know anything. So whatever works." And I said, "Okay." And I didn't want to push that button, but it was disheartening. And I started actually a youth choir there. But, these kids are some of the most talented kids you've ever heard. And we made like a whole orchestra, and I brought some lady in to run it. And people said music moved them so deeply that it helped them to pray like they've never prayed in church. And it actually filled the church. It brought people back to church because they said, "Hey, you got to hear, the music at this mass. Come check it out." And people just loved it. And then it helped them to appreciate the other parts of the mass too. So I just want to talk to the priests and choir directors out there, shoot for excellence. There are so many, and you can tell the difference. Don't be nice. As it says in the book, you don't always have to be nice. Some of my parishes, it's so frustrating. My old parishes, they've never got rid of that 80-year-old choir director who could never sing and is just killing the music. She's so nice and we love her. We want to thank her for her ministry, but you can upgrade. It's okay. My thoughts.
Yeah, there's other places for those people to serve, and I mean, unfortunately, this goes back to, you are saying this is the human nature part, but entitlement becomes a part. I'm entitled to sing. No, you're not entitled to sing. No one's entitled to ministry. It's a privilege. We get to do it, and we do it for the purpose of bringing people in a relationship with Christ, right? So, going back, it is staying focused on why do we do what we do? To make disciples. And the powerful part of music is it can reinforce truth and help us to know who we are and who God is, who we are in relation, who God is and who we are in relation to Him. But yeah, the entitlement's a big thing in the church that it's definitely a spiritual battle, because I think that is sort of like evil spirits get in people's hearts and they think I'm entitled to this. And we want to do that lovingly and compassionately, but you do have to do it firmly, because there is a spiritual battle in it. And if someone is not serving if it's about them serving themselves, like you said, it's not about me. It's about them serving themselves and wanting to be up on the altar or in front of people. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to serve the people of God and lead them to the Lord. And so we have to go firm after those things.
Amen. And we could talk about music all day as just one whole show for 45 minutes. It's so important. But maybe we could talk about investing in youth. I mean, this is equally, if not perhaps more important, debatably important. Because I read Renewing the Vision, which is about renewing the Catholic Church in America. It was written by the bishops. And they said one of the five most important ministries in any church in the entire country is youth ministry, investing in youth. And I have had fiery tirades in my past, just this, I don't know what I feel is a righteous anger, just a frustration of churches saying that the youth are important, but doing nothing about it, of saying that, the youth are the future of the church, but they refuse to invest money in youth programs. Protestants do it so well. Catholics do it so poorly. And, the youth are often forgot about. Maybe you could just talk about that briefly and why it's important toward excellence.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think first of all, it's important. We have to hang on the next generation. It's said about anything, the church or anything, it's one generation away from extinction, right? In the sense that if we don't hand it on, and so, I think it's Psalm 78 talks about the importance of passing on our faith to the next generation and sharing the good works of the Lord and what He's done in our lives to the next generation. So, obviously, it's there in Scripture. It's a huge part of what God wants for His church to do. I think. Look, I think we have to acknowledge it's very challenging in our culture and our world right now. I think that's some of the challenge we have as a church. For decades, we were just kind of able to pass it down. I'll say this, not necessarily effortlessly, but what probably felt effortlessly. The systems were in place, a culture was in place that supported faith. And we can have all kinds of discussion about, well, why is our culture not there anymore? But it's just the reality. We live in a culture that no longer easily passes faith down. So that means we have to redouble our efforts. I think going back to what you said, when I've heard, actually, COVID really did make a huge hit on youth ministry, and there's less investment in it. So in children's and kids student ministry. So I do think the natural pull, again, is just to get older. Right? I'm naturally getting older. Brian, you're naturally getting older, right? We don't need to do anything to get older. And the same thing is true of our churches. We don't need to do anything to get older. That's the natural passage of time. So it just starts with, I think, intentionality to say, like I said, we need to make it a priority, and great way to do that in our budgets. Who are we hiring? Who are we bringing on? And and to put energy and effort into it, knowing it's just needed, and we are fighting the tides of our culture.
I don't know where you live. I live up in the Northeast, but the youth ministry up here is abysmal. I would say the majority of parishes have nothing for youth. No youth ministry, that sort of thing. And it's really frustrating. In fact, I vented my frustration about my own parish, sort of kind of parish. I'm going to another one about 20 minutes away. But my parish is probably the largest or second largest in the archdiocese, and has over 4,000 families and no youth ministry program. Now, I volunteered to do one, and we had a great one going until, I'm not going to get into the issues, that, we faced, but, as you said, COVID killed that, like it just because we couldn't meet for years. And then I started Catholic Truth around that time, so I couldn't go back to it. And I told the church, hey, you need to, do this. We had a, really successful youth ministry program. You need to hire someone. And they didn't. And there's still nothing for them, and it's frustrating for me because I go around the country and I speak to youth all the time, youth retreats, confirmation retreats. And people tell me that I've learned more in 4 hours in your retreat than I have in 10 years of coming to this church or religious education. And it shouldn't be that way. I should be a supplement, not the main thing, not the main event. And, a lot of this is because there's no investment of youth. And when I ask priests, why, they say, well, we don't have the money. To me, Dale Carnegie once said, if you don't remember people's names, it's not that you can't, it's just that they're not important in your life. They're not important to you. If they were important, that you would remember their name. And I said, dang, that's convicting. That's true. And I say the same thing, it's not that you don't have money. It's just that the youth aren't important. If they were important, and this is my thought, my strong opinion, if they were important, you would find ways to invest in them. You would find every possible way to invest in the youth. And people love the youth. They would invest in them. We're just not doing it well, I don't think.
Yeah, you're right. And you look, again, if you want to know your priorities, look at your time and look at your schedule, right? That's exactly, or look at your checkbook, right? So look at your schedule, look at your checkbook. So yeah, I think there definitely has to be some introspection, and obviously every parish is different in what's going on. But yes, sometimes it's time, it's money, and sometimes again we can build up volunteers. We can invite others to we can call you even if you don't have any money, you have a pulpit, and you can call upon people to start investing in the next generation. Talk about the importance of that. So I like what you quoted Dale Carnegie. I always like what John Wooden said from the UCLA coach for basketball, like, do what you can with what you have today. So we will always be under-resourced in some way, but we can do what we can with what we have, whether it's, time or a little bit of money. And I'd agree with you. And I turned 50 this year. So I really feel like one of my things is really to invest in the next generation, and especially invest in next generation leaders. So I don't look at like high school and middle school as much as I look at 20-year-olds, and I think, what can I be doing? We have at the parish about 20 somethings that are working in the parish. How can I be better at passing on the wisdom, the insight I got from now 27 years in a parish, be passing on to them? That some of my role is to start passing on that baton. I don't know I think some of the thing is we don't always know what to do, like, because I'm not sure what that even looks like or how to do it, but it's okay not to know exactly what to do, but something's better than nothing, right? To do something, right? And then do something with what you have today. And so I think just maybe giving permission to parish leaders to do something.
Yeah, and to look into it, to study it. I'll be honest, I'm undernourished when it comes to financially for Catholic Truth, always. Mostly because I was built for ministry. I'm an evangelist, that's what I do. I don't do fundraising, I don't, but other people do. So I'm starting to put together an advisory board for those who can help us to create a more firm foundation so we can grow, so we can hire more people. I don't know that stuff. Other people do, though. So why not, rely on their expertise? We don't have to reinvent the wheel, people. That's why these books are written, and I'll link it below if you want, where you can get it. But this, read a chapter or two a day, maybe read 3 or 4 chapters a month that stick out to you and work on those, or maybe one a week, and just kind of try to implement them and put them into practice. These resources are here for you. Father Michael and Tom, they understand that you maybe just don't know, or you do know, but you don't know how to do it. Like I'm reading a book right now on how to have like the most successful planning. It's called Getting Things Done, the art of stress-free productivity. It's basically how to be like a professional at ridding your life of all this other stuff so you can focus on what you need to do and do it like really well so that you're productive. And I think people could all learn from that book, but also from your books too, of letting go a lot of this stuff and just learning how to do the basics really well.
Yeah, I think that's the focus, and hopefully, through our book Rebuilt and Tools for Rebuilding, we're hoping to help you focus your, going back to what we said, kind of a theme, And I think that is the hard part. I mean, we've talked a lot of things. There's music, there's youth ministry. So you do need to focus some of your efforts and help direct the focus to others. And I think going back to youth ministry too, I think sometimes the reason it doesn't happen in parishes is because, older people will be around and they will thank you and they will ask for attention. Younger people are not around. So again, we have to be
Mm.
intentional about reaching younger people, and they won't always say thank you either, right? I've done youth ministry, you've done youth ministry. You can't let the thank you of the high school students fuel you. It'll be few and far between. You need to, again, going back to a little bit, you're doing it for the Lord and doing in your own prayer time fuel you, and a love for the next generation fuel you to do that. So yeah, I kind of going back to focus those energy and efforts in what you think are the biggest priorities right now.
Yeah, and I want to challenge priests and, leaders of any kind out there to, really to do that focus. To, like, for me at Catholic Truth, when I first started doing it, it was overwhelming and I couldn't do what I wanted to do because I just spent every day just trying to survive. I had so many to-do lists and I couldn't even make sense of the to-do list because there was so much to do. So I didn't even have a priority of like lists. It just was overwhelming constantly. And I share the frustration and the struggle of leaders who have that day in and day out. And I had a, this book, Stress Free Productivity, this book, every book pretty much who is about leadership talks about the power and necessity absolutely of delegating. Like anything and everything you don't need to do, get rid of and give to someone else. Like that Darien church, that was just like model parish, I keep coming back to the priest. People come up, I think you need a Bible study, or I think you need, a ministry that welcomes new people to the church. We don't welcome new people very well. And the priest would always say the same thing. Well, sounds like God's put a calling upon your heart, get some good people and get that ministry started. He didn't have to do anything except they had to run it all by him, make sure it was on the straight and narrow. But he let the people who had the calling and the gifts do it. 80 active ministries, and he could do what he was called to do, and he wasn't overwhelmed. He wasn't just it was like a house sitting on him every single day. And I think that's so important. We have to learn the art of delegation and giving other people making these ministries. If you're in youth ministry, stop trying to do it all. I did that forever before I learned the, like playing nice with people and getting boards and getting helping and letting people do the work for me so I could do what I do best.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And, that is a lot to learn. Again, going back to what we said about it's the equipping the saints for ministry, right? Equipping others to be able to do the work. And we inspire, we encourage, we equip people to do that, but we don't have to do it all in parish ministry. And another way we try to help that too is, rebuilt. We have a framework to try to help as a model of here's how you approach parish ministry. Because you're right, it is overwhelming. One of the things that was really helpful to me was reading Purpose Driven Youth Ministry about having a model when I was doing youth ministry and a framework. And so we try to do the same thing at Rebuilt. We have a framework of how to approach ministry so it doesn't all seem overwhelming, and you can tackle the work of ministry in a strategic and intentional way.
Yeah, purpose-driven ministry, purpose-driven, church, those helped me a lot to focus and to do what I needed to do. And, we could sit here and talk forever. Well, what about my finances? How do I even get finances? What about, problems in the parish? What about needy parishioners? What about the website? What about announcements? Like, you have so much good advice on so many different things. Granted, all of these, chapters are super short. They're literally digestible, each one a day, make it, each goal, there's like 75 of them. So over the next 75 days, read one a day, see what speaks to your heart, see what you can implement. It won't be all of them. It won't be even most of them all at once. But, I want to recommend to you people this book and his other books, which I will link as well below. Chapters on music, youth ministry, parish life, website, all of these things. All of these things help to make a parish excellent, which in turn helps the people, which in turn helps them to give back, which helps make a community. And then we can, do what Jesus wanted us to do, which was the Great Commission, which is to go out and baptize all nations and evangelize the world. So I highly recommend this book. And, I will link all of Tom's, information down below so you can check out his stuff as well. Tom, do you have any, closing thoughts, that are on your mind?
Yeah. I think, parish in some ways we think it's simple but not easy. That there are some simple things we can do, but they take hard work. They take long obedience in the same direction. So Um, yeah, again, our organization, Rebuilt Parish, tries to help parishes to walk alongside with parishes in that effort. But I think I'd go back to what you had said, Brian, though, the importance of the end, coming back to what the Lord has called us to do and staying in that relationship. And I really believe, as although the church has a lot of challenges right now, I believe God is God gives us those challenges. God never calls people to easy work, right? God never says to Moses, "Hey Moses, I got a real simple assignment for you." Abraham, David got a clear, easy assignment for you. No, it's go fight Goliath, go lead my people out of slavery. They're tough assignments, they're challenging, but God always promises to be with us. So um, let's keep walking forward in hope and knowing that God is with us, and it's a privilege to get to serve Him in our generation.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing points. Amazing points. And I just want to close with Mother Teresa. She, uh, you know, w- worked with the dead and dying every single day. And people were stepping over the dying. She worked with people who nobody cared about, and she didn't have a lot of time to pray. And then one day, for one particular day, she didn't have a lot of work to do. She didn't have a lot of people, so she went to adoration for an hour, and it changed her mind. It gave her so much peace. It gave her this fire to do the work she did. And so much so that she ended up making it 2 hours a day. And so she went from not having time to pray because she had so much work to do to saying, I have so much work to do that I don't have time to skip prayer. I have to do this. This is my fuel. This is my fire. That's what made her a saint. People just do the work and they dry up inside. Whereas people who have the fire, it doesn't die and you can do the work even more and you change lives in the process. So please, as Tom just said, it all starts with you in that prayer life with God. Maybe that's what you need to invest in first. Tom, where can people find you and your work?
So I said, we a couple places, rebuiltparish.com. That's what we do to try to work with parishes. We do coaching and try to walk alongside parishes. And then also you can see us at churchnativity.com is the parish where I work. And then Ave Maria Press is where we sell our books. So a couple places you can find us.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us. And thanks for sharing this most important wisdom that so many of us, even myself, need to know today.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Good to be with you.
And thank you all for watching and tuning in as well. Please check out the description notes below to see all about Tom and to follow him, and also to support our work and to follow us on social media. And if you'd like us or Tom to come to your parish, please check out our websites below. And last of all, but not least, please pray for us and our ministry, and please pray for Tom, as we're always praying for you and all the people we minister to. Thank you all, and God bless you.